Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff,
And I'm Steve.
and this is Lit versus Genre, where we focus on adaptations, or at least that seems to be what we're focusing on now. We did it for Wheel of Time, we did it for Invincible, and now we are doing it for Vox Machina, which is, at least to me, in terms of what they are, adapting from, is really fascinating. One, the fact we've talked about nerd culture becoming more commonplace and cool in our society. Steve Brown throws about it. But obviously D&D was not like, when we were growing up, something that was, cool or awesome to do. And now you've got, figureheads like Joe, I can't pronounce his last name, Manganiello, Nelio, from like Magic Mike.
The True Blood guy.
Yeah, True Blood guy, who's a big proponent. He runs it in Hollywood. He's got like a whole room. It's sick. What he's got. It's awesome. Yeah, no, it's.
I was not aware of those.
Yeah, bringing it in, making it cool, basically. And now you've got Vox Machina, who's been going on for a couple of years with this Critical Role, I should really say, as a podcast, also on YouTube, of these various voice actors coming in and doing, as they seem to say, kind of a loose D&D, not about the number crunching, more about the experience and the fun, and just due to their massive popularity, then becoming an animated show.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing. Just this idea of like D&D, which is not cooler in the cultural norm, becoming in the cultural norm, and just watching people. The fact that I know a lot of it started on Twitch, which was a gaming platform for video games, but then it became more of a like also just gaming, and it's just so cool to me that people wanted to watch people play D&D. Like that's just awesome in and of itself, and that became so popular. I mean, we'll talk. I'm just saying. Cool.
Can you give me a little bit more background on these? Because from the bit I watched, what I picked up is that they were voice actors. Well, I went to their, like, they've done 3 campaigns, I guess. And when I went back to the first one, the guy's little intro was that they were all voice actors, which is immediately apparent because like all their voices are like so actory, like especially that like main the DM guy. He's like, I'm like, how did this guy how did he miss the boat on a CW show? Like, how is this guy not like the third brother in Supernatural? Like, he's like 100% that dude.
Should be the third brother in Supernatural, if we're being honest here. But yeah, I mean, their voices are great. I was really impressed. I'm not huge into Critical Role. I haven't watched a ton of it, but what I did watch, I really enjoyed. The main guy, Matt Mercer, the DM, being the voices for this like various dwarven town, and like being some of the regular people, and then being the barmaid, and then being, so it was cool, his range, it seemed like, from what I saw, and so really bringing it to life. Yeah.
Were they bringing like any, I mean, I guess, as a voice actor, you're not terribly known, I'm imagining, but right. I'm wondering, were they like bringing some like fan base from, when they said voice actors, they mean like cartoons? Were they like on a lot of cartoons,
video games, cartoons? Because like video game voice acting is like really big now, in a way that didn't even used to exist back in the day, right? But now it's so many of these. I mean, but Skyrim, all that stuff is fully voice acted, which is amazing. So yeah, I think a lot of it's that. I'm not familiar with their bios. I some of their voices I knew. Like I watched Vox Machina with my wife, and she's like, I know the voice. I know that voice. Like for like almost every voice. So I think some of them are in video games.
That's funny. Okay. Well, before we get into the show, Jeff, so your experience with watching some of the, I just watched it on YouTube, and I guess there were Twitch VODs originally. That you did really enjoy this experience of watching a group of people play D&D.
Let me couch it. So I thought it was fascinating. Like I found it very like curious and intriguing. Could I just watch it for a long period of time? I don't know. I don't think that's, I feel part of me delighted in how it just went places that I didn't expect it to. Like I thought they were going to go to this inn, get some information, then like go on the quest. They don't. They're like, maybe we should talk to this person, or like, oh, but there's this fighting arena in the bar. Are we going to fight in that? And so it was fascinating to see the characters really choosing, or the people really choosing their own path and like asking questions I didn't expect them to ask. Or then like one person's like, oh, but what about this thing that came up 10 minutes ago that they care about that nobody else cares about? And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And you can't, it's hard to write a group of like 5, 6 people interacting, just because for the reader to keep track of everybody is tough. If it's a new group of people, normally you layer their introductions, that sort of thing. You do scenes with 2 or 3 of them. But this, because you could see each of them, because their voices were so distinctive, I was pretty much able to keep track of the group. There were some that didn't talk, right? So it just felt like this was a different type of storytelling that I could appreciate. I don't know, again, how long I would want to appreciate. I like appreciate a microcosm, I think, and then getting to see a show, I'm like, cool. So I think that's where I'm at.
If we get people who are interested, like huge fans of the show, I'm gonna get hate comments because I wish I had given it a little bit more time, because I can see the idea of it being like improv. You know, my wife does improv, and I can see like the idea of long form, this being long form improv.
Yes.
That said, long form improv is really hard, like really hard to do.
Improv
like
is just really
you
hard,
gotta be
like,
but there's like short form that's a little bit, a little bit more like game based and like things like that, whereas form, like you just have to be skilled people, trained for years and years to be able to do that and to make it watchable. And like when I clicked on the YouTube video, my entire body immediately rebelled against what I was seeing. I was like, I'm having trouble. And then I looked down at the YouTube at the corner, and it's 4 hours long, episode 1 of like, I'm like, really? People are watching. Who has this time? Who has this time that they're watching 4 hours of a group of strangers play D&D?
Yeah, I think they're listening to it. It's like you're reading, it's like audiobooks. I think that's why it works, because because it's like an audiobook you can listen to while you're making dinner or exercising or doing things. I've definitely found it easier to fit in book reading with audiobooks personally, in times that I wouldn't normally be reading. And I think because it's all these voice actors, and it's not, you don't need to be focused on the visuals. You can just hear it. I can see it working. But don't get me wrong, I do hear you. Like, this is a lot of content that they're putting out. Like, we talk about how long our videos are talking about, right? And then it's like
how long it takes. And then I went to the third campaign, and now they're doing like cutaways. Like originally it was just like the guy was in the corner, like what we do. Like you just set up the template, the guy's in the corner, and you don't have to cut to stuff. And then by the third one, they're cutting to each individual shot. When like the DM talks, he's the only figure on the screen. When like this group are talking, and I'm like, oh my god, it hurts my brain how much time that takes. It just hurts my brain. But even more so, I got this feeling, and it's funny when I had this thought, because then I was like, oh wait, this is what everybody does now. But I was watching it, I was like, this is the feeling that I would get as a kid watching other people play video games, right? Like that, like I like D&D. I was in role-playing club in high school, right? I've done like not a ton of D&D, but I've done some of it. But it was like so much of like, yeah, I could see this be really fun if I was doing it right now. And then like watching somebody else do it just makes me go, well, I would just rather be doing it than watching this other people do it. And I'm like, I feel like watching someone else play games. And then I'm like, oh my God, that's all we do anymore. There's whole websites where you just watch people play video games. But I think like some of today's are a little bit different in that way. Like there was a difference between like being Luigi and having to wait for Mario to die before you get to play again, right? Like that was like the worst. That was awful. And like that's how I felt watching Critical Role. I was like, I cannot do this. So these seem like nice folks. They seem like entertaining people, but I could not bring myself to watch it.
So I think I do want to talk about this just a little bit more, because I am into gaming and watching people and stuff, and it is fascinating, this culture of how we watch people do things. I think a lot of that is because someone feels like they don't have the time to do it at a particular level that they would like to do it at. So for instance, if we're talking about competitive gaming and anything, I think, the idea of getting to watch a tournament or watching people that are better than you, so you can see how are they doing it, so then I can do it, right? Obviously, that's not quite applying to D&D in the same way. You're not watching them beat a level so you can recreate it yourself. I think they're sort of like the dream. Like, imagine if we had a DM as good as Matt Mercer, who's like doing these cool voices. And like, I was just super impressed with the world building he had done for this like dwarven town. Like they would ask a question about someone, he knew about like the families who were there, the people who are there. I felt immersed in it in a way that was like super neat to me. So I think that's part of it, is you're getting to do this thing that maybe you don't have a DM that's that good, or you're not that good at DM, or you're trying to become a better DM, or you can't find 5-6 people who will play this game with you. And so you get to do this thing. So I do think it's like herding cats, like with D&D, to try to get that many people together regularly doing something can be tricky. So I think that's part of its appeal. People that really like D&D but can't play it in maybe the way they would want to, or the frequency they would like to. That would be my guess. But I do also hear what you're saying. Like, trust me, many times when I'm watching someone play like a game, unless it is like a tournament, unless I'm watching like the highest level, I'm like, I'm just going to go play, because like, what am I learning? What am I gaining from this is normally.
Right. This is not a skill-based thing. This is not like a spectator sport or something where you can like watch a tennis match and be like, oh, they're so good at this skill. You're like,
could be. I think DMs in training would watch Matt Mercer and be like, oh, look how he did that, or oh, look how he did. But I agree. For the most part, it's generally not.
I don't know how to say this next part without horribly offending you. But actually, I want to anyway. That's part of the fun. That's most of the fun. The other thing about it was I was like, not only am I watching other people play D&D, I'm watching theater people play D&D. And there's just something that's overly effusive and like spot like stealing and like kind of like that just feels like nails on a chalkboard a little bit to me, that I'm that made it kind of tougher than watching normal people play D&D. And it also didn't feel like now this is very subjective. This is my experience of DVD, but I got this evidence that this is the true experience of D&D, because there's that great Community episode. Probably the best episode of Community is the D&D episode, which has shamefully, horribly been censored on like every streaming service. And it's enough to turn me into the Joker that it has. Like, it doesn't, like, it should not be, but it's a fantastic episode. And that episode, watching it, what really struck me was like how dead on that the experience of D&D was, because my experience is there's always two kinds of people playing D&D. There's either people who are way too genuine about it, like way too sincere, way too like taking it too seriously. And then there's the other people who are just fucking with you relentlessly the whole time, right? And it's the confluence of these. It's like the conflict, the absolute like Larry David-esque, Curb Your Enthusiasm conflict of that I feel is like the truth of D&D. And Critical Role did not capture that for me. They are way too nice to each other. They're not like, doing that
at all.
No.
They're all the ones that they're taking it seriously or just being nice and are along for the ride is what they're doing. Which I do think there is that other group. I think there is the along for the ride group that's like, wait, what am I supposed to be doing? Right. Like, no, that's sure. That sounds fun, right? And then maybe they can invest a little.
Well, that's just a weird game in general. It's just like a fascinating sociological experiment that game is.
I had no idea that Gygax was from like Lake Geneva in Illinois. They actually have like little things up for him. I went there randomly because my dad wanted to go there. And there I was like, wait, what? D&D came from here? Like in a bookstore, there'll be like a little thing for like, Larry Gygax is from here. And I was like, what an inauspicious.
Oh, that's the game creator. I don't even know that name.
The game creator. Okay. I didn't know it really before that either. And what's fascinating is because Lake Geneva is where it's really rich, and there's all these like gorgeous houses around this lake that's is beautiful. Or wait, is it in Wisconsin? I'm sorry, it's in Wisconsin. I'm confusing it for Geneva, Illinois. So yeah, it's a little bit north. So people would go like from Chicago and not north, but they would go from Chicago to there to like hang out in their like mansion houses, basically. So it's just funny to me that that's like where D&D came from, this social gathering of people pretending to be, you know, dwarves and elves and halflings and all this stuff. So that's was our initial takes on that. But what about now the show Vox Machina, which I think anyone watching knows that they did a whole basically fundraiser, one of the most successful fundraisers ever, maybe the most successful fundraiser, so successful in fact that Amazon picks them up. It was like, oh, we'll just make this for you. I do wonder how that changed things. I almost wish I could see the slide. Oh no, I just do. I wish I could see the sliding doors of if they had just done it in-house with like the people they were planning to hire to make their show. I wonder if having it through Amazon made it any better or worse. I am curious about that. But anyway, thoughts on the show?
This show. So
Tell me.
It feels weird to say like adaptation because I don't really, I don't even know, because I couldn't watch it long enough to know if whether these were like any of the characters they actually play.
They are. They're all the
in the game.
And it's the original, it's the same voice people voicing their characters.
Right. Okay. Okay.
These are the characters from it.
So
we should let's try to do non-spoiler first, and then we'll do spoiler.
Okay.
After. So
sure. So let me just say, I found this to be the most bland, generic fantasy thing that I like, offensively bland. Like I was like, wow, that was so blandly predictable every moment of it that I was genuinely impressed. I'm genuinely impressed how like bland and boring it was. I really disliked it. And then I was like, I want to go watch them play D&D again. That was like 20 times more enjoyable than this show.
Okay.
See, and this after I watched it, I was like, Jeff's gonna make his videos about things he loves, and I'm gonna make like a counter series just about things I loathe. And I did not like any moment of this. Like I found it grating, annoying. I didn't find any of the jokes landed. I thought the plot was like rushed and predictable. I didn't like any of the characters. In fact, a few of them I just found like I outwardly just hated them so much. Like I really disliked it. But how'd you feel? How'd you feel?
No, this is really a verse is in the title for a reason. I think again the thing it's it's like I'm playing my tiny violin for forever right now, but because the amount of fantasy shows are so limited, right? Each one that appears is to me precious in a way, besides Wheel of Time that can go down in flames. But most of them are precious because it's like there's not many of them out there. So for me, if it's decent, I'm usually going to be excited because it's like, oh, it's fantasy. That's watchable. I could watch this. And so that's fun for me because I like the content so much. I will say maybe part of it was coming off of Wheel of Time and just how that sucked my soul. So this felt like light and fun in comparison. I didn't really know the characters and they're they're definitely going we're the anti-heroes, but we're still kind of fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the shtick they're going for, which I think some people love. I think for others, it is a bit of a harder sell. This happens early, but like in a bar brawl, like dude cuts off a dude's hand. It's like, whoa, that's a pretty extreme thing to do. It's bar brawl. I will say they kind of make it cute with them like playing with a hand afterwards, right. And stuff. So it's like, kind of okay. But I think a lot of people don't mind that. For me, I was mainly disappointed in, which something I'm going to say I think will seem strange due to the number of hours they some of these characters. Some of these characters didn't seem true to themselves in a way that I expected them to be. It seemed more designed for the narrative, especially in episode 1, that I was like, doesn't seem like here. That's like directly conflicting the things that they were just saying. So that to me was weird. I was also disappointed kind of like by what the big bad ended up being in the first episode. I was expecting something. It didn't seem to line up with the opening. So it felt like they were just doing the opening for just the look of it, but then it doesn't really match.
Or the jokes of it. Like
exactly.
Of the death. So let me
Mhm.
say, and this
Yeah.
is when I make my
Yeah.
things I hate in the universe first video, it might be
Sure.
about this. This did every humor thing that I
Yeah.
hate, where like none of the comedy is organic to the
Mm.
character. None of it really, it all throws you out of the story. Like the
Mm.
humor is at war with your suspension of disbelief, right? So
Mm.
like just a few examples that pop up off the top of my
Sure,
head
sure.
was the song that the bard dude
I was gonna
does
say
and
the
when it
song
goes into rap,
goes into
like
that.
it's like, yeah, haha, it's not even like that good a joke. Why
Mhm.
is it worth going, like looking squarely at the camera, breaking the fourth wall and going,
Mhm.
this is a joke, right? Like, why do you got to do it?
Yeah.
And then when the king guy is like, oh, I like the bear, like, oh yeah, let's hire him because I like the bear, I'm like, the king guy wouldn't say that. Like, it's just, it's
Yeah.
going like, screw the characters, screw anything we've established, here's our joke that we wrote and we're
Yeah.
gonna shoehorn this joke in no
Well,
matter what.
and the
And it
bear's not
like,
even there. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
right, he's
so
not even
it's
in the
just,
room.
I mean, I guess he did illusion magic and showed what the bear would look like, I guess, but it
But
was
even
I mean,
so, like the
yeah,
king, the way the king's portrayed until that point, he's
he's
not going
like
to make a
super
quippy,
serious.
and
Yeah,
this is a huge like
important
issue that they're
thing.
all debating, and then he's like, oh, I
Yeah,
like the bear, I'm like, no, that's just a joke that doesn't fit the character, it's
right,
completely outside of your narrative, and it's bad, it's like real bad. And that's like all the
right,
humor in this was like
right,
that, where it's like, now I don't buy your character anymore because they
right.
winked at the camera and made like a cute joke.
I will say I thought they were having fun with it, and that was nice to see because most of the fantasy that's come out recently has been like The Witcher. If we're talking, just I'll keep it animated to be just that. So Witcher animated movie, Castlevania, and I think Castlevania is quite good, but it is mostly dark. There is humor in Castlevania, but I think the humor in that actually lands really well and is very in keeping with their characters. It would
Mm-hmm.
almost be interesting to do like I'm not going to make you watch all Castlevanias.
So many
We'll play
cartoons,
the
bro.
video
I don't know
game.
how
We'll
many
play the
cartoons I can
video game
take.
Castlevania and then play. No, I'm joking. But the point here is just that a lot of the fantasy that's come out recently has been more serious. I think probably as a product of Game of Thrones being successful, right? They
Mm-hmm.
even try to make Wheel of Time more serious than I think it was. So it's nice to see a show that has some levity. Now, I will say that they are going hard on this like swearing sex angle like right away. That's very in your face. That it seemed like there was a little bit of that when I watched the show, like the original Critical Role, but it seemed like they were really pushing that agenda. It was funny because I was talking to some people that are a fan of Critical Role, are a fan of D&D, and they were planning to skip the first couple episodes. They're like, yeah, I hear the first couple episodes, they just go like really in to show that they're bad or whatever, and then it really starts with the Briarwood arc, which is like an actual arc from the show Critical Role. So, and then like that's when it like picks up the like true narrative or whatever. So it was interesting for me to hear like just things that might be a turnoff for people, right? Like for you, it's maybe too much of the jokes. For some people, it could be like tied to the jokes, the sex and all the swearing, the violence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because some people aren't into that. And then for others, they might like it. Like to me, the levity I appreciated in comparison to things that I've been watching recently. But I do agree that there were things that felt forced, asides from people that I don't know if they'd really say. Arcane was
Right.
also very dark, right? So it just feels like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this stuff is sort of dark right now. So having something that's more fun, I appreciated. But yeah, I mean, it would have been nice if they land a little bit more. I mean, I did enjoy the halfling scaling or whatever with the singing. Not necessarily that part, but I enjoyed his through line as a character. He felt very true to me like the whole way, constantly striving, having sex, doing music, parties. And it was just like a fun sort of thing for him. But I do hear you about the rap part. I was conflicted about that. I was like, I just want a fantasy show to be fantasy, but is it fun? Yeah. So I hear what you mean about that part
I
specifically.
feel like it's hard to strike these tones because a lot of it felt like the and I'm not super well versed in animation, but it felt a lot like the old Teen Titans cartoon. Not
Mm.
even Teen Titans Go, but just when it was like the Teen
Yeah,
Titans
yeah,
cartoon, and they would do these kind of cutaways, and they would like, it was all
yeah.
very,
Mhm.
I don't know, those ground rules were kind of set and clear, like right at the
Yeah.
beginning, and they didn't try to always like mix that with that, like I need to who I need to take seriously and when I need to take them seriously. So like this show, they're like setting up like, oh, they're these misfits, they're these bad people, but like they dime turn and it's so telegraphed and you just know, oh, they're gonna go back to the town, the same kid who's gonna protect my kid and pat him. She pat him on the head. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, so but anyway, I will agree.
People don't watch it. It's not even a spoiler because you know it's going to happen. You know everything that's going to happen at all times.
We're going to get into spoilers now. We're just doing it. We've had some initial shots. I had some likes. Steve has some dislikes. Paige has likes. Now let's get into spoilers. That was my biggest problem with episode 1, for sure. It's just like
it's one of many for me.
I mean, what I was saying about the characters not being true to themselves. So Vax or Vex, I think his name is Vax. Literally interrupts the one person on the ride there about like, we're just in it for the money, right?
Right.
And then they only have 3 silver, and then he gives a third of their money to a random kid. I'm like, wait a second. I thought you were in this only for the money.
Yeah.
Why are you giving like, I would have been fine if you give him anything else, right? If he's like got like, you know, he throws some like morning stars at the creature, which we'll get into momentarily, or like the morning, like ninja stars. Like if he had one of those, like a tiny like blade or even a rock that he was doing or something that was from somewhere that he wanted to give to a kid, sure. You want to show that someone who's mean, like has a soft spot for kids, whatever. But to have it be money, it made no sense to me. And then because they die, suddenly we go from fuck trying to do this thing to like, well, now we gotta, right? And that just felt like very disingenuous for the group. It felt very forced that they would suddenly be just this change of group dynamic and character. So that was unfortunate.
Yeah, it feels like the show just, and even like that core concept, I'm like, this is just bad Firefly, right? Like they're just going like, oh, we're doing the same setup. It's like a group of, you know, bad guys who really have hearts of gold and blah, blah, blah. But like, it's not, it's rushed, it's forced. Nobody's actually funny. And it was super rushed. It's like, oh, we already met this huge dragon and then we're already back. And it's like, what? Slow down a little bit. You know, you don't need to like do all this in the first episode. Like it just,
like they wanted like this little catchy intro that was very like sexy, sweary, fighty. And then we get to the true story with like the Briarwood arc as we start to see in episode 3, for instance. It seems, at least that's the feel I got from it. That they thought they had to do this little intro. So yeah, it was strange. So that was odd to me for sure, especially with that character. And also then the other character, Percival, who was talking about morality being something you don't have time for. And then he's the one that they're breaking their contract to like the king. And it's like, well, you don't have time for that. Then the priest character, Pike, is like, but we should do good. And he's like, that's why I hate traveling with holy folk because they've got morals. Right. Like, but you're the one that just said you broke your word. Why would you care about breaking your word if your morality? Now, later we do learn that Percival is interested in high society and stuff like that. He wants to get back into being around nobility. So that would make a little bit more sense. But
did they release a few episodes or I only watched the first one?
Oh, there's 3 episodes.
Oh no. Oh no. I ruined the podcast. I thought there was just one and I was like, okay. Off. Thank God this was the longest 20 minutes of my life that I just watched. Like
okay. We'll just give it episode 1 for now. And then for our next one, we can just talk. You'll be talking about like 5 episodes. It's fine.
Okay. Oh, you're gonna make me watch 5 more. Wait. Does it get better? Or is it just
Yes. Okay. I would say it gets better, for sure. Like I said, I think the first episode was this very forced intro of like, because the end of the first episode to me was the worst episode because it ends with a characters acting completely unlike how they would act. So yeah, first episode was the worst, hands down. Plus, as like an animation guy, someone who appreciates the animation, like I was so sad that they did the dragon the way they did. I was like, oh, this dragon just looks like ass. I feel like I'm watching like
I
Dragon
don't even
Prince or
understand. Does
something.
that save like a lot of budget, or like
know.
I feel like that would be more expensive or
I
something. I
see
don't
it like
understand why it's not hand drawn when
I don't
everything else is
know.
hand drawn.
I see
They're
it a decent
even
amount, like where
they're
big
even
creatures will be
right.
not hand drawn. I'm like,
And there are
what do
even
you mean?
moments in it, and again, I don't watch that much animation, but it does seem like I've seen this before. Obviously, like
Yeah,
mixing,
yeah, the mixing, yeah,
CG stuff, even like
badly
Beauty
done.
and the Beast back in the day. Mix some
Yeah,
CG
well,
stuff
it was
with
beautiful.
regular animation stuff. But like, there was one where I think it's when they're going into the castle to see the king and
Mm.
all the people, where it's just a random door opening
Oh,
that's so
the
like
jigsaw
clearly
door.
computer animated.
It did look a little different, yeah.
It takes like it was like a 2-second shot, and I was
It's a
like,
strange
what?
choice. Yeah,
Why? Like, and it's
yeah.
so noticeable. I'm also like, how is it possible just this door opening is so noticeably not hand drawn? It's wild. And
Yeah,
like it
it
just
was it was
is
strange to
weird.
me. It was strange. I would say that there's a fight that I did really like that happened later. Yeah, no, I understand now more why you're saying, yeah, if you only watched episode one, yeah, no wonder you're crapping on
Yeah,
the
I was
show.
sorry. I didn't know there was more.
No, episode one was like, it was weak to me. Like I was happy to watch something fantasy that it seemed like they were having fun making, and I think it's a cool success story, in terms of Critical Role podcast turning into animated show. So I was like sort of giving it a benefit of doubt in there, but I would say that the next episodes definitely get better. I would say the second episode it's still about that same story, so it's still pretty predictable. But the third episode is where I started to enjoy things more. That's more where it feels like the Briarwood arc is beginning, and now that we kind of know these people and we kind of got a sense of who's who. So yeah, I'd say the first two episodes are a little awkward, the first one especially, but then it like sort of settles in a little bit by episode 3.
So if this is all then based off like the actual campaign they did, is like D&D officially involved in this in any way, or is there any copyright issue about using are they doing real D&D campaigns on the
That's what I've been
podcast?
wondering this whole time. Honestly, I haven't researched it enough, but I am curious about that very fact, because I think they're just going generic. I feel like they're just going generic, half elves, halflings, dwarves.
Right.
And I don't believe there's any copyright on those things. The priest pays to the Everlight, so I don't know if Everlight is specific to D&D or not. But yeah, I haven't seen that this is specifically being called D&D. Like
Right.
there's no D&D branding or logo. And if
Yeah.
you do buy anything that's D&D, there is D&D logos on it. Like even a book that's about D&D, it's like D&D. So I don't think so. I think they turned it into like generic fantasy, which is one reason it might feel like generic fantasy.
Feels so generic.
Yeah.
Like, and that's, I feel like that's like the miss of this, right? To like kind of just do a straight fantasy story when what they're popular for is kind of playing this deeply odd game, and I feel like there were maybe other things that you could do. I mean, I gotta go back to that community episode, because I think that's like brilliant what they did filmically, to make that interesting and actually really fun to be like, you're never in the fantasy world, right? Like you're just watching people playing the game the whole time, that it's like just around the table. That's all the shots that you're cutting to. And to make that visually interesting and fun was amazing. But you wouldn't want to redo that. I mean, community already did that. But like, why not kind of do the flip where they are just the people playing the game, but you're watching this fantasy version? In other words, they can like make them like break the world the way people do in the game, like break like the reality of the world. Like it's still the big purple guy or whatever, but he's like actually saying something that his person would be saying, or something. Or I just do something creative, something interesting, something that hasn't been done, instead of aggressively what has been done 100,000 times.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the first episode felt more cliche than the others. It gets
okay.
We start getting into some things that feel more. I mean, it's still Misfits. I mean, they're not. Yeah, I mean, D&D people break character, right? And in this, they're not. Like they are like these characters in the world. Now they might do things or say things that are a little bit more modern, like the rap thing, right? But not that much. Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. For me, as someone who does consume a lot of fantasy, I would just say it's so minimal that this doesn't seem that overdone just because there's not that much fantasy out there. Though, again, the change of characters in that first episode is crazy awkward. So yeah.
So let me say that let's bring it down to something that again we can argue about here, because you were like, oh, this feels like a palate cleanser to you compared to Wheel of Time.
Fun. Yeah.
When I was watching this, I was like, this is Drek. And my brain, my PTSD from doing the last, all of December that we did a podcast is I remember people screaming in all caps about how awful the Wheel of Time was. And I even remember when I was reading, I was like, have these people ever actually watched television? Because television is so bad. Like so much of television is so unimaginative, recycled, like boring, barely competent nonsense. And I was watching this show and I was like, this is awful. Like this is like I would be the one on the internet going, this is the worst thing I have ever seen, compared to Wheel of Time, which I didn't love it, but I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I don't know. It's okay. And this is like what I kind of, now, where's the bias? My feeling is that the bias is you love a book. And so then you hate this fine, competent thing that's not great, but it's finally competent and you hate it because you love this book so much. Whereas this first episode, man, there was at no point in watching Wheel of Time where I was like, I am hating this. I want it to stop. If I wasn't about to do a podcast, I would hit stop on this and watch The Price is Right or something. Like it was awful.
Well, I do want to know which is the cartoon bias, because Wheel of Time was live action, right? So.
Yeah, maybe.
But
I mean, I can't say anything if it was in live action and it was the same. Like what I think all my complaints would be exactly the same as they are right now, that it's all feels bland. I've seen it all before. The characters don't feel real. Every character annoys me, especially so my other Steve hates video that I have that I'm writing in my head at all times is the character who doesn't have confidence. I'm so sick. I am sick to death of the character. I don't have confidence in my magical ability. It's like, no, I don't care about you. I don't care about your quest for confidence. It's so, and you see it everywhere. Like every plot is like, that's the character arc, is like, I gotta find my confidence. Oh, gee, do you think they'll find their confidence by the end of the show? Do you think maybe they will? It's so predictable. It's so boring, and it needs to stop. Everybody stop doing it.
I think what happens too, that we need to take into consideration is I think this is why people become grumpier as they get older, because once you've consumed enough stories, like we talked about before, like the amount of stories our society has consumed is insane. Like the number of shows, books, movies, comics, anime, whatever that we've all seen, way more stories than if we go like in the past, So you're gonna see more and more repetition as time goes on, because you've seen more permutations of what stories can be. So for someone that hasn't seen that sort of story a lot, or hasn't seen it, in the format of fantasy, they're going to be intrigued or like that. Whereas for someone who's seen a lot, then they can be like, oh, it's boring. I've seen it before. So I think that that's what becomes tricky about like watching and saying, what is right I was gonna say right for stories to do, or good practices for stories to do. I would say it is just one character of many. I do hear you that is a common character arc, but it didn't bother me as just being one character.
I take what you're saying, and I think it's valid. People come at stuff at different times, and like something that like, is borrowed from old things, but then it's new for you. It's really exciting. That said, there is a zeitgeist, and there are people who are early to the zeitgeist, and there are people who are late to the zeitgeist. And I would say this is extremely late at this point for this character. It's real stock. And I'm not going back decades on this. I'm saying like in the past few years, we are inundated with these characters that are like their main issue is that they need to find their confidence. And I would even argue it's not even an interesting issue because again, it's not between characters. It's a fully narcissistic, solipsistic, something inside myself conflict that it doesn't even put you into conflict with the other characters. You're all just waiting around for this person to find their inner confidence and then kick ass the way they always should have been. And it's like, it just feel like doesn't feel dramatic to me.
Yeah, I mean, it can be between characters when the other one believes him. Like, I think Arcane did a really good job with this, with like the sisters and the one sister constantly messing up, but then the other sister being like, you can do it. And I feel like they didn't follow sort of a traditional path with that. I know you have feelings about Arcane, but I would say,
but I mean, just to give an example of a show that it was a month ago or 2 months ago, where it's the same, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is, it's not just like people are just coming, maybe.
I agree.
You know, 80-year-olds have seen Casablanca before and they're like, oh, like I really like this. And then somebody comes to it later. This is happening constantly all the time.
I think if you see it a couple times, it doesn't bother you. But if you see it like a bunch, and obviously different people have different, amounts they're willing. So I will say that I think, like Arcane is doing something more subtle and more interesting. And it is between characters and the belief of each other and what happens in that. And we didn't quite get that here. Like we do have the girl Trip and lose her staff, and then the other half elf gives the staff. So we get that there's maybe like a little romantic vibe between them. And the guy does end up saying like, you saved us, but why'd you make it so quickly? So there is some of that, the character kind of being like, you can do this. So that does create a little bit of that between character, but I agree that the way they're handling right now, it's not largely between characters, just an issue she has. But I think the thing to keep in mind is that a lot of people are going to be watching this because they want to see the characters that they've spent 4 hours an episode watching now on a screen. And like, these are those characters. So I would say that, in the show's defense, I think the people are just, the characters we're seeing are the same characters that were there. So she was, in one I watched her, she did seem very hesitant. She like totally failed her role on what she was trying to do. And then they had to deal with that. So it does seem true to her character. Now, I know that doesn't necessarily equal good storytelling, and that's what I would say is my main thing with this is that the voice acting I thought was great. Like, again, we said they're voice actors. I enjoyed them. They were fun. I thought they said their lines well. I enjoyed that aspect of it, like the little banter and stuff like that, especially in later episodes. And there'll be like little things someone will say, which I do think is more cribbed from like the Critical Role show, because you got all these people, they're all mic'd, right? And so someone will just throw like a little offhand comment that's fun, and you do see some of that in the show, which I think is nice. You look pained by all of this, but what I'm saying,
are we watching this whole thing? Even right now, I'm like, why are we not talking about Arcane? I would rather be talking about Arcane than
this. A lot to talk about.
Than this boring, dull ass show, man. And I know I'm going ham on this show, but y'all,
this is why they released the first 3 episodes. I would swear, because like the first episode by itself is, that change at the end with the kid and the coin, and it's like, oh, what? No, what? I like the one dude trying to figure out what's going to rhyme with dead dragon. Like I said, I like that character. He seems like he stays true to himself.
But even then, like, that's just the whole heel turn of everybody's bad, and then like, oh my, now we're gonna go kill this dragon. 5 minutes ago we were like, no, I just didn't buy it. It just feels like that's what has to happen for the story, but it's not what any of these people would do. Especially
because like just a minute ago they'd all said no, like we don't know their attachments to towns. They're getting thrown out of every bar. Like, it just doesn't, just line up. I mean,
I would
like
rather
said,
watch them be assholes the whole time, because again, that's what people do in D&D.
I mean, they were
They
more
let their
assholes
id
in the
go
bar.
crazy. That's like the beautiful part of this fantasy world,
Yeah.
is that you get to be chaotic evil. It's in the game. It's like
Yeah, it's there.
codified in the game
Yeah,
that you
there it is.
choose to be chaotic evil.
Right.
And then you just get to do it. And it's so liberating, and it's so,
I do
and
wish
it's
they had
not
lingered more on that.
wholesome and
I wish-
uplifting and
Like,
ah.
I will say, I mean, I think you could make also a lifting show, but yeah, it was too strong a pivot. Like if the whole selling point is their misfits who don't care, who are a lot of them chaotic evil or whatever. But yeah, it was just, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that they chose to start it this way. I do sort of wish that maybe it had started with the next. I don't know. I will say that there's some great scenes that I really enjoy for those who have watched the other two. I love the shopkeeper scene. That to me was totally fun. It felt like an awesome shopkeeper, and there's some cool banter. I feel like the show does the sexiness of fantasy in a fun way. Like there's this dude that's tied to like the dragon. He's got some like erotic dragon art up. Like, and that to me is just like, it's cool because yeah, if you're in a fantasy world and into dragons and there's half dragon creatures, yeah, you'd have that up. So I like the time that they put into that it's people being people, no matter when it is, no matter what races there are, creatures there are, what time period it is. And I think that that's cool. So yeah, besides the bumpy star, we can decide where to go from here. We should probably wrap up in terms of like, do we want to pivot to Arcane? I mean, if we want to talk about storytelling and writing, I think there's a lot to talk about in Arcane. There's a reason why Arcane blew up the way it did. And I know that there's stuff you hate about it. So it'd be, again, a perfect first one for us to do. I will say overall, for anybody who wants to watch, if you find the first episode of this entertaining at all, I would say definitely watch the next two episodes. I think they improve. And I think where episode 3 leaves us creates a very sort of intriguing, where is this going to go from here? So I would say that. I wouldn't say it's the best animated fantasy I've seen, but I would say that I'm enjoying it for what it is at this point. And as we know, Steve would say, watch Price is Right. Instead,
watch Price is Right.
What are you doing with your time? Do you have any like
the showdown, showcase showdown, man? That's exciting. That's got some suspense. I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know. Whereas in this show, I do know what's going to happen. So why would I not watch Price is Right instead?
It has been, I will say, it has been pretty predictable so far. I do. Episode 3 left a little unpredictability, and I think that's why that excites me. I think maybe even that's why the person who knows this stuff was like, I'm waiting for the Briarwood arc, because that's literally what I'm talking about, that they got into introduce these characters. I was like, these characters seem interesting. Some like villain characters basically, and then wondering where that's going to go. And I'm like, all right. And we do actually get to see a kind of like a darker side from sort of a character doing what they want to do, sort of thing. So kind of speaking to what you're talking about. So yeah, it is interesting that they chose to lean the way they did. I wonder how you would have felt about the show if they were just like being total assholes the entire time.
I would have liked it a lot
with
better,
like one good character. It's sort of, I mean, that's how they are.
Yeah, who's continually frustrated. I mean, that's just like what Community already did, but that's D&D for me, y'all. That's what it really is at core.
Any other last thoughts about this?
Nah, man. I say let's dig into Arcane next time, dude. That show is the elephant in the room. I think it's weird we haven't talked about it yet. Let's just do that, and then we get to play. You let me know if the show gets any better.
Okay. Well, this is what I is. We'll go switch Arcane, and that way too we get to play some League of Legends as old men. So
there you go. Yes,
that'll be hilarious. Yes. So you all can look forward to us playing a little bit of League of Legends and talking about Arcane. If you have thoughts about Vox Machina, let us know. Especially as the show continues. I am planning on continuing to watch it because I'm enjoying it well enough. And so, yeah, talk to us down below. As always, everybody disagree. And as Steve likes to say, smash that subscribe, like, dislike. We know you really want to hit the dislike, so go for it. And we'll see y'all next time.
Bye, everybody.